Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. This time, we're going to explore something truly massive, the blue whale. We're talking the largest animal on Earth. And maybe, just maybe, the biggest to have ever lived, period. So today we'll be diving into how this magnificent creature got so huge and how its incredible features help it not just survive, but actually thrive in the depths of the ocean.
It's amazing, right, how the blue whale kind of stretches our concept of what biggest even means. Like, you've got those giant sequoia trees, massive fungal networks, even sprawling aspen groves, right? All contenders for that largest life form title. But there's something special about the blue whale.
Yeah, those trees and fungi, they're huge EE, no doubt. So what makes the blue whale different?
It boils down to this idea of a single integrated organism versus a colony. Think of it like this. The blue whale, with all its complex systems working together as one, it's like a bustling metropolis, right?
Mhm.
Everything's connected, interdependent. The trees and fungi, well, they're expansive, sure, but it's more like a collection of individual towns, each genetically identical, but not truly unified in the same way.
That's a great analogy. So the blue whale takes the crown for biggest single organism. But, okay, seriously, how big are we talking? Hit us with the mind-blowing stats.
All right, get ready for some serious scale. Picture two school buses, parked end to end, that's the length of a blue whale, reaching up to 30 meters. And hold on to your hats, because they can weigh nearly 200 tons. That's heavier than a Boeing 737 for crying out loud.
Whoa, that's insane, like a living, breathing cruise ship cruising through the ocean. What blows my mind is that the fossil record hasn't shown anything bigger. Makes you wonder if there were even bigger creatures roaming the ancient seas that we just haven't discovered yet.
You got it. The fossil record, it's a fascinating puzzle, but it's definitely incomplete. Always that chance we'll find something that totally rewrites our understanding of size in the animal kingdom.
All right, let's shift gears for a second, talk about how something this colossal even gets to that size, right? We're talking a growth spurt for the ages here.
We'll start with this. A blue whale calf, at birth, is already bigger than most adult great white sharks. They're born giants. And get this, for the first 6 months of their lives, they gain an unbelievable 200 pounds every single day. That's like gaining the weight of an average adult human daily.
That's just bonkers. What fuels that kind of growth? It can't just be your average fish and chips diet.
So you're telling me
Yeah.
it's all about a super specialized diet, starting with an incredibly rich milk. We think of whole milk as high in fat, around 3%, right?
Yeah.
While blue whale milk, it clocks in at over 40% fat. It's like a supercharged energy drink designed to fuel that rapid growth.
Wow, talk about high-octane fuel.
Yeah.
But what about once they're weaned? What keeps that massive body going?
Here's where it gets really cool. The largest animal on Earth sustains itself primarily on some of the smallest creatures, krill. These tiny crustaceans, they're the blue whale's main food source.
It's kind of ironic, right? The biggest thing out there, feasting on these minuscule crustaceans. It really shows you how connected life in the ocean is. Krill. They're not just vital for blue whales, but for the whole marine ecosystem. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on krill sometime, but for now, let's stick with that massive appetite. How much krill are we talking?
All right, prepare to be amazed. A blue whale can gobble down a staggering 4 to 5 tons of krill every single day. That's like eating the weight of a full-grown African elephant daily.
Okay, now that's a visual. How do they even manage to eat that much? I know they're filter feeders, but walk us through it.
So blue whales, they've got this remarkable feeding strategy. They take these huge gulps of water, up to 90 tons in a single mouthful, which is another whale's weight. And then they use these things called baleen plates, like giant combs in their mouths, to filter out the krill. Imagine a giant sieve separating tiny shrimp from a massive amount of water.
That's incredible. Like giant swimming vacuum cleaners, filtering massive amounts of water to get to those tiny snacks. But there's a catch, right? I read somewhere that despite those enormous mouths, their throats are surprisingly small.
You got it. Their throats are surprisingly narrow, only about the size of a soccer ball. It's another incredible adaptation, making sure they target their main food, krill, like a built-in size filter so they don't accidentally swallow anything too big.
So hypothetically, even if I got swallowed, I'd probably just get spit back out, maybe with a little side of krill.
Uh-huh. That's a funny way to put it, but yeah, essentially. That throat size limits them to smaller prey, which works perfectly for their krill-based diet.
Okay, that's both reassuring and fascinating. Speaking of identification, remember that news story about a whale carcass in Taiwan that was misidentified? They thought it was a fin whale, but turned out to be a young blue whale. Seems like they can be tough to tell apart, even for the experts.
Absolutely. Blue whales and fin whales, they've got this striking resemblance, making them tricky to distinguish, especially at first glance. Both have that streamlined body, similar coloration, even comparable fin shapes.
So besides DNA testing, what are the giveaways?
It-
Just in case I'm ever on a whale watching trip.
All right, here's a few things to look for. First, check out the head shape. Blue whales, they've got a more rounded head, almost U-shaped. Fin whales, on the other hand, more pointed, V-shaped head. Then the dorsal fin, the one on the back. Blue whales have a smaller one further back on their bodies. Fin whales, bigger, more prominent fin, positioned more forward.
Right, and there's that weird asymmetry with fin whales, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The lower jaw of a fin whale, it's got this asymmetrical coloration, left side darker, right side lighter. Pretty cool feature, sets them apart from blue whales, who have a consistent light-colored lower jaw.
So these two, they're more than just lookalikes. There's a genetic connection too, isn't there?
You hit the nail on the head. Turns out blue whales and fin whales, they've been known to interbreed, and they produce hybrid offspring.
Wow, really? How do we know that?
Through genetic analysis, we've confirmed these hybrids exist. Sadly, some were even found in commercial whale meat markets, which just highlights that whole illegal whaling issue.
That's both fascinating and kind of depressing. Why would they interbreed, though? Just mistaking each other because they look so similar.
Could be. Their visual similarities, could lead to some confusion out there in the vast ocean, especially during mating season.
It's like finding those traces of Neanderthal genes in modern humans, a reminder of interbreeding in our own evolutionary past. Makes you wonder, why haven't blue whales evolved to be even bigger? I mean, if they're already the champs, why stop there?
That's a great question, and it takes us into the world of biological limits. Things like gravity, temperature, even oxygen availability, they all play a role in how big an animal can get.
So there's a point where getting bigger becomes a disadvantage.
Exactly. The environment sets boundaries, and pushing past certain limits can cause a whole bunch of problems. For example, living in water. It actually helps blue whales overcome some of those gravity constraints that land animals face. They don't need those super heavy-duty skeletal structures to hold them up.
Makes sense. It's always amazed me how whales can be so massive in the water, but when they get stranded on land, they're incredibly vulnerable.
It's a stark contrast, Their immense size, which is a huge advantage in the water, it becomes a liability on land. They can literally get crushed by their own weight because their skeletons aren't built to support them outside that buoyant environment. That's why those larger whales often die from their own weight if they get stranded, even if they don't suffocate first.
So water unlocks these incredible sizes, but even in the ocean, there are limits, right?
Absolutely. Let's dive into some research that sheds light on those limitations. One study, for instance, looked at the hydrodynamics of blue whale feeding. They found that the bigger the whale, the more drag force they experience when they lunge for krill. This means more energy expenditure as they grow.
So there's a point where getting bigger makes feeding less efficient. Like the energy they spend outweighs what they get back.
Exactly. It's all about balance, energy input versus output. If a blue whale gets too big, they could run into problems like not getting enough oxygen, stress on their skeleton, and just not getting enough bang for their buck when it comes to feeding.
It's like there's a sweet spot for size, where the pros outweigh the cons. And it's not just about feeding, right? Wasn't there another study that looked at their heart rates, and the findings were pretty wild?
You talking about the research that showed those crazy heart rate fluctuations? They found that a blue whale's heart rate can drop down to as low as 2 beats per minute during a dip dive, and then skyrocket to over 37 beats per minute at the surface.
That's like going from a leisurely stroll to a full-on sprint. Imagine the stress on their hearts.
You can say that again. Picture a heart the size of a small car switching between those extremes. Really shows you the demands of being that massive.
So even their hearts, as impressive as they are, have their limits. Maybe those heart rate swings are another factor that keeps their size in check.
Definitely an area of ongoing research. But while we marvel at their size, it's important to remember that even these giants face threats in the ocean.
That's a good point. Being at the top of the food chain doesn't make them invincible. What are some of the biggest dangers they face?
Well, first off, their food situation's good. Plenty of krill, their main dish. Krill populations are doing all right, thankfully. And of course, they've got natural predators, mainly orcas.
I've seen some incredible footage of orcas taking down whales. It's amazing and kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah, orcas are formidable predators, but they don't attack blue whales that often, usually targeting the younger ones. The biggest threat to blue whales, unfortunately, comes from us, humans.
The human element, huh? Seems like our impact on nature is inescapable, even for the largest creatures on Earth. How are we affecting blue whale populations?
Our relationship with whales, it's a mixed bag, full of admiration, but also exploitation. Whaling, for example, has a long and often pretty dark history.
It goes back centuries, right? From
Ex-
communities who relied on whales for survival to that devastating period of industrial whaling.
Exactly. Early whaling was often about necessity, using whales for food and resources. But when industrial whaling took off in the 19th century, things changed drastically. Whale oil became this highly sought-after commodity used for everything from lamps and machinery to everyday things like soap.
It was all about profit and new technology, right? Faster ships, more efficient hunting methods like explosive harpoons. It all led to the decimation of whale populations across the globe.
Yeah, it was a really bleak chapter in our relationship with these creatures. The impact on blue whales was especially severe. In just over a century, an estimated 380,000 blue whales were killed, mainly in the Southern Ocean.
It's heartbreaking to think about. Their numbers plummeted to a tiny fraction of what they were before whaling. It's incredible they even survived.
It's a miracle they bounced back from that relentless hunting. Thankfully, there's been a ban on commercial whaling since 1986, but their recovery has been slow. As of 2018, it's estimated there are somewhere between 5,000 and 15,000 blue whales left, a far cry from their historical numbers.
And even with the ban, they still face a bunch of threats, right? I've read about ship strikes, getting tangled in fishing gear, plastic pollution, even noise pollution from human activities.
You're absolutely right. These modern-day threats just add to the challenges they already face. Ship strikes can be fatal or cause serious injuries. Entanglement in fishing gear, which is often meant for smaller species, can lead to drowning or starvation.
It's a sobering reminder that our actions have consequences, even in the vastness of the ocean. We've come a long way in understanding and appreciating these gentle giants, but there's still so much work to do to protect their future.
Couldn't agree more. Protecting blue whales, it's not just about saving a single species, it's about ensuring the health and balance of our entire ocean ecosystem.
It's a responsibility we all share. Before we dive into the specific conservation efforts underway and what you, as listeners, can do to help, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned so far. We'll be back soon to explore the more hopeful side of this story.
It's true, the threats are real, no doubt. But amidst all that, there's a growing wave of awareness, action, people dedicated to protecting them.
That's good to hear. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this. So where do we even start? What's given us some hope here?
One of the biggest wins was that 1986 moratorium on commercial whaling, implemented by the International Whaling Commission. That was a turning point, offered some much-needed protection.
Definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But enforcing a ban like that across the whole ocean, that can't be easy, right? What else is being done to stop illegal whaling?
Oh, absolutely. It takes a multi-pronged approach. We're talking international cooperation, satellite monitoring, cracking down on illegal operations wherever they pop up. It's a constant battle, but the dedication of researchers, conservationists, governments, it's making a difference.
That's good to hear. Sounds like a global effort. Now, what about those accidental entanglements in fishing gear? Any ways to minimize that risk?
There are some promising strategies out there. One approach is to modify fishing practices using gear that's less likely to entangle whales in the first place. Another big one is establishing marine protected areas, kind of like safe havens where fishing is restricted or banned altogether.
Makes sense. Create those safe zones. But what about ship strikes? Those massive cargo ships and tankers got to be a real danger, especially in those busy shipping lanes.
Yeah, ship strikes are definitely a concern. Fortunately, there are efforts to address that. Things like rerouting shipping lanes, avoiding known whale habitats. Another key step is speed restrictions in critical areas, less chance of a collision. We're even seeing new tech that can detect whales in a ship's path, giving them time to change course.
That's encouraging, seeing so many different approaches. But noise pollution, that seems trickier, right? The ocean's getting noisier with all the ships, sonar, oil and gas exploration. Got to be disruptive for whales, relying on sound to communicate and navigate.
It's a pervasive problem, that's for sure. Noise pollution can mess with their communication, their feeding, even cause stress. Addressing it involves a bunch of things: reducing noise levels from the source, developing quieter technologies, and establishing noise-sensitive zones in important whale habitats.
So many initiatives to protect these animals, it's inspiring. But conservation isn't just about rules and agreements, right? It comes down to individuals, too. What can our listeners do in their everyday lives to help out?
You're right, everyone has a role to play. First off, learn about blue whales, the challenges they face. The more you know, the better choices you can make.
Knowledge is power. I'm with you there. What else can we do?
Supporting those organizations dedicated to whale conservation, that's huge. Lots of nonprofits and research institutions are out there working hard. You can volunteer, donate money, or just spread the word about what they're doing.
Donations are always good, but any other ways to get involved, especially if our wallets are a bit thin?
Absolutely. Be a conscious consumer. That's a powerful way to make a difference. Choose sustainable seafood, reduce your impact on the oceans. Simple things like cutting back on single-use plastics, those end up polluting our waters. And don't forget your voice. Speak up for policies that protect whales and their habitats. Contact your representatives, urge them to support conservation efforts.
It's great to know we can all contribute, even in small ways. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about something we haven't really touched on yet, those internal size limitations. We talked about the environment, but what about the things inside their own bodies that might restrict their growth?
That's a great point. It brings us to the incredible physiology of these animals. Let's start with their hearts, the largest in the entire animal kingdom. We're talking a whopping 600 kilograms, about the size of a small car.
Whoa, hold on, that's just wild. Can't even fathom a heart that big. But something that massive got to have its own set of challenges. What's it like having a heart that enormous?
You got it. Pumping blood through a body that size takes immense power and efficiency. And remember those crazy heart rate swings we talked about? Imagine the strain on those heart muscles. Talk about a balancing act.
It's amazing how their bodies have evolved to handle those extremes. Their hearts are like high-performance engines, constantly adjusting to keep up with their massive size.
Exactly. But even their hearts, as incredible as they are, have limits. And those limits might be part of what keeps them from getting even bigger. It's like a built-in checks and balances system.
It's like they're pushing the boundaries of what's physically possible. Do their other organs face similar limitations? Their lungs, for example. They must be huge to support a creature that size.
You're right. Their lungs are the largest in the animal kingdom, holding a mind-boggling 5,000 liters of air. That's enough to fill a small swimming pool.
Whoa, that's some serious lung capacity. But bigger lungs, bigger demands on the respiratory system, right? How do their bodies manage that?
You nailed it. Those massive lungs need a powerful and efficient respiratory system. And as they grow, those demands just skyrocket. It's like a network of highways delivering oxygen all over their bodies.
So it's not just their hearts working overtime, it's their whole respiratory system pushing the limits. Are there other internal factors that might play a role in their size?
Absolutely. Think about temperature regulation, for example. Blue whales, like us, are warm-blooded. Gotta maintain a stable body temperature, even in those chilly ocean waters.
That's always fascinated me. How do they stay warm without thick fur like polar bears or blubber like seals?
Well, actually, they do have a thick layer of blubber, helps them conserve heat. But here's the thing. As they get bigger, their surface area to volume ratio decreases.
So they have less surface area compared to their size, making it harder to lose heat. That seems counterintuitive.
Exactly. Getting rid of excess heat becomes a challenge. Could even lead to overheating, especially when they're active. It's all about balance, staying warm but not getting too hot.
So it's this constant tug-of-war, generating enough heat to stay warm, but then managing that heat effectively. Another factor in their maximum size, huh? It's like their bodies are constantly compromising to function at their best.
That's a great way to put it. It's a fascinating dance between how their bodies have adapted and the limits imposed by their environment. Speaks to their resilience and adaptability.
It really does. They've evolved into these incredible giants, pushing the limits of what's biologically possible.
Yeah.
And yet, despite their size and power, they face all these threats, many caused by humans.
It's a powerful reminder that we gotta protect these amazing creatures and the delicate balance of our oceans.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from their inner workings to the global efforts to protect them. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to those individual actions, the things our listeners can do to make a difference. You mentioned a few earlier, like supporting conservation groups and making sustainable seafood choices. Could you expand on those a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So supporting these organizations, the ones doing the research, the conservation work, that's a great start. There are some amazing groups out there fighting for these animals. Donate your time, some money, or even just spread the word about what they're doing. It all helps.
Right on. And what about the seafood we buy? How do we make sure we're making choices that are actually good for the ocean?
Choosing sustainably sourced seafood, that's a big one. Look for those certifications, like the Marine Stewardship Council label, the MSC. That tells you the seafood comes from well-managed fisheries, the ones trying to minimize their impact, you know?
Those are some great tips. And I think it's important to remember that even small actions, when enough people do them, can really add up, right? Every choice we make, whether it's cutting back on plastic, supporting sustainable fishing, even just talking about blue whales, it all helps create a healthier planet for these amazing creatures.
I couldn't agree more. It's a team effort. Everyone's got to play their part.
Well, I think we've reached the bottom of our deep dive into the world of blue whales. It's been an awesome journey, full of wonder and a real sense of responsibility.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
From their mind-blowing size and adaptations to the threats they face and the global efforts to protect them, the story of the blue whale is a powerful reminder of how amazing and fragile life on Earth is.
It really highlights how important it is for us to be good stewards of the ocean, not just for the blue whales, but for everything that calls it home.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, this isn't the end of the journey. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep speaking up for the health of our planet and all the incredible creatures that live here.